Hello, everybody. Here with Allie Bauch, and she is the current head coach of Conant High School softball. She's a former Slugger, lifelong Slugger, and also a former player for the University of Illinois and a retired professional player for the Chicago Bandits. And so I'd like to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank her for spending some time with us. I would probably consider Allie one of our most decorated, if not our most decorated, former Sluggers. So had an opportunity to go through some of the records she set at the University of Illinois. Not to embarrass you, Allie, but pretty impressive. So I can't. It would probably take me longer than we have to go through everything, but I think season wise, you hold like, I think it's like 10. You're in the top 10 as far as season records for a lot of the hitting statistics, average slugging percentage on base, runs, hits, doubles, triples, home runs, total bases, walks, and then career wise, you're top 10 in almost every category. It's crazy. And it's everything from average to slugging percentage to even stolen bases. So pretty impressive list of numbers. If anyone ever gets a chance to go on the University of Illinois all-time statistics website and kind of search that out, I was pretty aware of how good of a career you had there, but I guess I was more aware after I had the opportunity to go through and really look at the list and some of the players that have played before you and since you, and just to see your name right there with them, it's pretty impressive. But I guess the one thing that I found most impressive out of everything was you were a 3-time All Big Ten academic selection and the first softball player ever to be on the first team All Academic Big Ten. And you were also a 2-time academic All-American. So I guess the way I would like to start this is maybe tell us a little bit about how you balance both academics and athletics. So that would be a great place to start, because it seemed like you did a pretty wonderful job at doing both of those
Okay, well, thank you, Dan, for the
things.
I am really happy to be on here and like talking to just the Slugger Nation. And I think it's awesome, first off, like what you're doing and how you're like reaching out to different alumni. I think that's super cool and just kind of speaks to the culture that you guys are just living to. And so I just commend you for doing that, first off. But regarding like my career and just like the balance of academic and athletics, I feel like I was just always like taught discipline, like growing up as a kid, and just balancing academics and athletics with like being a 3-sport athlete in high school. I just never had time to like have that downtime. So it was just like kind of like habitual for me when I got to college. And I knew that if I was gonna, commit to a D1 sport, I had to commit just as much to my academics as I did to my athletics if I want to have success after college, especially when you major in a subject like math. It does kind of require some time and commitment. And I was willing to put that in because I did have a passion for math. And so I just, like, you just have to kind of bear down and buckle down and know that like your future kind of depends on the work that you put in now. And although it was tough at times when I'm on the road and I have to take a test with like one of my coaches proctoring me on the bus, or I had tutors like 3 times a week. I had to log in 12 hours of study hall every day or every week. And you just have to do it. And you have to just embrace the challenge. And I kind of enjoyed it because I've always enjoyed just going from like one thing to the other. So yeah, I think discipline is kind of one of my strong suits, and that kind of helped me be successful both academically and athletically in college, at least.
Sure, that's awesome. But so now you're coaching Conant High School. So we're on a I guess a required shutdown. So you're really just getting an opportunity to talk to your team, I'm sure, virtually. So I've seen some, for those of you that may follow yeah, Conant High School softball or Allie on social media. You guys have been putting together some pretty cool stuff. Kind of talk about a little bit about what you're going through with your team right now. Now that you guys can't really practice or have physical contact at this point.
Yeah. So a lot of, I think like spring sports are going through the same transition period as we are. Like it was a tough pill to swallow and like thing to understand. Like our season right now is suspended, and I think the unknown is what the scary part is. But what is like so crucial at this time is like to remain connected and to do as much as you can to stay united. And so that's what kind of our focus for Conant is right now. And I talked with the girls in the beginning of like when this was all happening, and I reached out. I don't know if you know that we have like leadership groups. I'm sure maybe Morgan told you. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I was aware of it last year, so I'm assuming, and I think I seen a post this year too, where you guys had kind of your breakout sessions or whatever, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. So like we have girls in charge of like the game. We have girls in charge of practice, and then we have girls in charge of like Cougar Pride and like team building. And so I reached out to those girls and I was like, all right, I'm thinking that like this is a perfect time for us to embrace this new normal. And I think we can make it and like take advantage of this time. And so what the Conant softball team's doing is each day a girl's in charge of like thinking of a task, a challenge, an activity for the entire team to do. And then we like report back to each other. So we have this app called Flipgrid. So I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah,
app.
I haven't played with it yet, but you're like the third or fourth person that's told me that they're using it. So
yes, it's really cool. Because the thing that I was missing, which I'm sure you are too, is like just seeing the girls' faces and like, yeah, you could see their faces like in like a picture, but like just like though I want to hear them talk and I want to see their personality, and like that's what I was really missing during this time. I mean, it's only been 2 weeks. I it's driving me crazy. I just want to interact with them. And so we use Flipgrid as a tool for them to like record themselves doing videos of like checking in and stuff. But what has been awesome in this entire process is like what the girls have come up with. Like it truly like it gives like me chills because like the ideas of and the creativity and like what they're coming up with is just truly cool. And the whole team's like buying into it, and each day and each activity is completely different. You know, like Janessa put together a workout, then you have like Emma who's doing like an art challenge, and then there's just so like diverse ideas, and the fact that everyone's buying into it has just been really cool to see. And then you have like Hannah who's thinking of like community and like reaching out to like our healthcare heroes, and
that's because her mom's a doctor. You know that, right?
yeah, well, hey, I'll take it. But you know, everyone has like their own like little passion for it. Like one of our girls did meditation, and I do not meditate. Like I should like, you know, calm down sometimes and like take a sec, but I don't do that. So I like am stepping out of my comfort zone to do these things that are passionate to the girls. And it's been cool to like kind of see what their passion is and what like they're trying to relate to the team. And so I know this like time is this quarantine time is like obviously frustrating, but I also think it's like a unique time that we'll probably hopefully never have again. And so I think we can embrace it and find positivity in it. And so that when we look back on it in the future, and this is what I tell the girls, like we look back on it and we have like positive things that we can take out of it. And so it's been cool to see them like buy into that.
Yeah, it's neat. I was able to get my 8s and 9s on a Zoom call, and I have 22 kids, you know, between the two teams. And so my biggest concern was, can I keep them all quiet, and can I keep them interested, you know, for an hour and a half meeting? And so successfully I did. Not quite sure how we did a little event where we had a talk and kind of an information dump and kind of a little bit of a motivational slash mental game piece of it. And then we went into these challenges and we just said, okay, we're going to have, silly challenges. And so we went through this, I think it was 5, and we scored. We put them into teams and we said there's 5 teams. And I think the first challenge was, okay, go put your uniform on as fast as you can. Because believe it or not, as 8 and 9-year-olds, getting a kid dressed at sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning is a challenge for the parents, to get them to the field and get them ready to warm up at 7 a.m. for an 8 o'clock start game. And so, and teaching an 8s and 9s, where their uniform is and making them accountable. And so I tried to pick things like that had some relation. And then we added some fun in, and we're like, okay, as a team, you guys all have to accumulate exactly 50 rolls of toilet paper and take a picture. And so you would not believe the amount of text messages that we got from the parents just after that one simple, silly little meeting that just said, thank you, we appreciate it. Very helpful. Like our girls, were kind of down and they were missing their friends and teammates, and they just really, really appreciate, seeing everybody's faces and hearing their voices. And so, yeah, I mean, I would definitely encourage all the teams. Like if you haven't done it yet, like, get online. There's great tools out there, Flipgrid, Zoom, whatever, you want to use to connect with your to your players. But yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed watching the stuff that you guys have been doing. I look forward to seeing what's next. I'm honestly going to steal a couple of those ideas and do them with my teams. And so, yeah, it's been fantastic. So as far as you've been on both sides of the coin now, you've obviously had a travel career, even dabbled in coaching a little bit for the Sluggers after you stopped playing. And now you've been a high school coach for a few years. And I've got to ask, because I see a lot of it and it frustrates me from time to time, where there's a lot of negativity towards from travel coaches towards high school coaches, and from high school coaches towards travel coaches. And really at the end of the day, we're all trying to accomplish a lot of the same things. And what's your spin on why that is, and maybe what we can all do to break down those barriers and kind of work together towards common goals?
Yeah, for sure. When I was in high school, I remember this even still being a thing. And as a player, I remember I was very confused by that whole concept because, to be honest, my high school team, I was playing with like 7 girls who went on and they played D1. And so I was like, why is there this like conceived notion of like high school being like the stigma, like high school's not competitive, or high school coaches don't agree with what's happening with the travel, or travel doesn't agree with what's happening with the high school, where I feel like so much more can be accomplished if like they just like merged into one and then they fought it together, because both have awesome things and awesome unique parts of like high school. Like you'll never be able to play well unless you go on to college, but like when you're playing for your school, like there's something that's super awesome about that. Showing up to school in your uniform and like wearing your mascot like across your chest, that's awesome. And girls should never take that for granted. Obviously, point being right now what we're going through. Like, you always remember your high school time, and then travel, like you are with that travel team for like a lot longer than you are with your high school team. So it becomes a family, and you're able to like improve your skill set. So I just believe that in both cases, you can improve different parts of your game. So you might as well work together. And like for me as like a high school coach now, I want to have a relationship with the girls' travel coaches so that we can communicate about the player like throughout the entire year. And I can communicate any observations that I see. They can communicate any observations when they're in the season with them. I just think it's for the better of the girl herself too, like if you're on the same page, because that's the end goal for everyone. We want our girls to be the best people and players that they can possibly be, and I think you're only going to get there and attain that goal is if you work together, and if you're on the same team and you're battling you're battling it together. So I think that's huge, a huge point that I hope that people are accepting, that high school is important and travel is important. And in order for us to get to the next level, you have to work together and you have to be on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope people recognize that. I realize that every situation is different, and some people have, uh, different different goals, and different situations at their high school and their travel teams. And it's like, I think the key is parents and players just need to handle change, better,
Hmm.
because that's really what we're talking about. Is maybe a player's being asked to do something differently at one or the other, and maybe the focus is a little different at one or the other. Some people go into high school situations like you, where they're playing on like rocks. I mean, I've seen some of those teams you played on, and that team in and of itself would have made a great travel team because it was full of
Right.
great players. And then there are other players that maybe don't get that opportunity. They play for a weaker team, and so there are just different nuances. But it's like, I think the key is you just got to be able to manage change, because that's all you're doing, is you're changing from one team to the next, then back to the next. And I think that's where parents and players struggle a lot with that transition time.
And like going off of that, because that's a great point. I think that change is okay. And I think it's also good for the girls and good for the parents, because if the goal is to have these girls play in college or to play, after high school, their coach is going to expect different things from them, like their college coach. So I think if they're able to handle it at a younger age, then they're able to handle that change when they're in college and their coach is telling them something way different than both their travel and their high school coach, because every coach is different and every coach handles things and has different practice plans, but you have to just learn to adapt to it, and that's okay.
Yeah, look at what we're going through today. It's we've all had to change like immediately. And so,
Right.
change or change or else kind of a thing. And so, we're in life and softball and whatever, you're always going to have to manage change in your life and do the best you can.
For sure. Yeah, change is not always bad.
No,
Like
absolutely
figuring
not.
out new things.
um so let's talk about kind of the early years, like when and how you became a slugger, and kind of give us the history of your kind of early playing days and travel ball.
Yeah. So what's kind of funny about that story is my first year when I tried out for the Sluggers, I was young. I was they didn't have like 8U or 9U or
That's
10U.
actually very new these days. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah, travel was new. So they had 12U. So I was a 10-year-old trying out for 12U for the Sluggers, and I didn't make it. And I was like really upset. And I ended up joining the Powerhouse, which I don't even know if they have a team anymore. But I was with Alyssa Lancaster, and that's how I met Alyssa Lancaster.
Oh,
And
wow.
we were on the Powerhouse together. And it was just like this really small town team that like, the commitment level was low, but it was softball and we just both loved to play. I was actually a pitcher. And then we both tried out for the Sluggers when we turned 11. So now we're a little bit older, we're more advanced, and we made it. And we both tried out as pitchers, and she made the team as a pitcher, and they told me that I didn't make the team as a pitcher. And I was like heartbroken, because I was like, what? I've always, if you know me at all, like I'm like a wannabe pitcher. I'm always like trying to pitch, and I'm like, you just killed my dreams. But so we made the team, and that was when it was Jeff Jacobson and Jim Goranson as our coach. And so I kind of transitioned into like a position player, which hindsight, obviously one of the best things to happen to me. And then we got Coach Hill the following year, and he kind of just took over our program. And it just, I mean, obviously was one of the greatest times of my life. And that we had like a core group of girls like Bree Lingle, Andrea Starr, Alyssa Lancaster, me, Nikki, some of them joined a little bit later, but from that moment, like in 12U, like we started there and we were with each other until 18U. And I think that was so cool. And truly now it's like one just big family. So yeah.
That was cool. No, yeah, I didn't know you guys back then. I kind of came in way later when you guys were a little older, probably met a lot of you guys when you're 16 or 17 years old. And I remember even going to some of the high school games or watching you guys practice. I used to enjoy just watching Jeff and Frank like run a practice, and uh, I remember at that time because I had only really known baseball, and my daughter at that time, Morgan, was a rec player who was transitioning into travel ball. And I just remember the speed of it and the intensity of it and how hard you guys worked. And I would sit there and watch a practice and just kind of be amazed at some of the things that you guys were doing and how hard that they were pushing you guys. And so maybe if you can give me a little bit about that, because for me as an outsider coming in, it just didn't look normal. It looked like something something special. And so something definitely different, because even coming from the baseball side, I can tell you right now, and I played baseball at a fairly high level, I just remember you guys working harder than the boys did, like this, just being more intense and tougher, and it was just faster paced. And so it was impressive. But had I known at that time, not every team did it at that level, but you guys surely did. And so I don't know if you knew what you were doing at that time and kind of knew that it was hard and special or not. But
I think, to be honest, like when you're in that moment, you don't really think of it as like, oh my gosh, I know I'm working really hard and I'm working harder than everyone around us. Like you're just in it and you're enjoying every part of it. And I will say that there were some times where I was like when he told us to bring our lunch to practice one time, because like it's gonna be that long, I was like, oh wow, okay. So like, but I never thought like, and this is where I think like this is like huge. Like I never thought like, wow, this is so hard. Like I just was in it. And I think that's important for like girls to understand is, don't think of hard work as such like a challenge. Like embrace it, love it. I like love that part of it. I mean, did I love when he was like, okay, go run 10 laps around Timbercrest, the 2 fields? No, but like I didn't even think anything of it at the time. And I think what was cool about just the whole experience with Sluggers and like the whole mental game, like obviously was very new back then, but like we were developing skills that we didn't even know we were developing through all of this. And, without it being so specific, like here we're going to work on discipline, or here we're going to work on work ethic. Like they didn't talk about it like that. It just like happened with all the reps and happened with all the practices, and everything was just so beautifully outlined, the practice plans, and everything he said to you was so thought out in his head, and he knew everything what he was doing had a certain consequence from it. And like he pushed us past our breaking points and past what we thought we were capable of doing. And Coach Hill and Coach Jake, like the way they worked together too, like it was so cool. And like you said, like from an outside perspective, like fun to watch. Thinking now as a coach, I would love to watch a practice that they run. Like I would love to be a fly in the wall and like go back in time and like watch one of those practices, because you don't really appreciate like the work and what they really are doing for you until you are doing it yourself to now other girls. Because like when you're in that moment, you're just a teenage girl, like working hard, doing your best, getting tough. But that Coach Hill and Coach Jake on the other end are like strategically thinking about everything that they do. And you saw like the impact and the outcomes from it, and everything that they did was so worth it in the end. And I think that's why we were able to make it where we were. And that's why you see a lot of the girls now are successful, because of just the skills and the lessons that were instilled with us within the practices. and like all the little things too. I could go on forever about this. I'm sorry. But like
That's okay. Keep
we
going.
had
It's great.
like we had like formal dinners, and so we like dressed up like in dresses, and you know, everyone was like fancy. We all wrote a poem for each other. And like it's times like that where it's like it's just way more than just the 4-hour practices too. Like in order for you to take your team to the next level, you have to commit time. And it takes time. It doesn't just take, you know, 2 practices a week and then playing tournaments on the weekends. You know, you have to make investments, and Coach Hill and Coach Stake did, and I'm so thankful for that. They invested their time, their life into coaching us, and it there was like rewards, and it paid off for them. But I'm super thankful for that. And like just the moments and like the little things, like the formal dinners, or we would make pancakes together. We would have like hit fruit. Like I could go on about the things off the field that took place as well, that are also crucial in developing, you know, a team and developing those skills. And I don't know where they learned it all from, because it's awesome. And so I just hope to be able to have that impact on girls too, and to affect girls rest of their lives the way that they did on us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're not the first one to tell a story about, you know, how impactful they were, and the proof is in the pudding at the end of the day. It's like if you look at your roster of players and put aside all the physical accolades for softball and look at what type of human beings all you guys are all becoming, and it's like you know, high level contributors to society. I mean, it's that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And so you talk about going that extra miles. Anybody can roll a lineup card out there and go coach a game, but what they did was so much more than that. And so I was fortunate. I was coming in right at the end of Jeff's term, and he was actually not only your coach, but he was also our commissioner at the time. And then also as Frank was kind of retiring, and I think had the opportunity to kind of see and learn from them at an early age. And I wish some of our managers, even today, it's like you try to pay it forward and spend as much time as you can, but those guys were special, and they did do it at a high level, and they did, you know, it's like nobody does this for the pat on the back. It's like that's not
Mm-hmm.
why anybody does it. And if you're doing it for that reason, you're doing it for the wrong reason. And they were so selfless in everything that they did, and so giving of their time. And so that was the model that I got to learn from as well. So you got to learn from it as a player. I was able to kind of pick up a lot of that stuff just from a brand new coach who thought I knew a lot at the time. You know, coming from the baseball side, I learned about the first 3 months of playing how little I did know about softball. And fortunately, I was able to tap into somebody like a Frank Hill who was still giving of his time. Like even to this day, I could call Frank and ask him to help me out, and he would spend whatever time I needed with him and helping me. And if he doesn't know the answer, he's going to go out there and find out whatever it is. And so for you guys to have that opportunity to play for those guys is, yeah, I'm sure it was special. I mean, it was special even from an outsider's perspective. But so you talk about you know, Jeff and Frank, and so you're a head coach, and you talked about it a little now. It's like, I'm sure, and you had an opportunity to be coached by, you know, so many people even after them, you know, through college and high school. And so I guess, what's your coaching style? Like, what have you tried to develop? Like what would, if you were to sit here and say, okay, this is what I'd like to be, this is what I'd like to do, like, I guess, what would that be?
You know, that is an amazing question that I'm still trying to answer, I think, because like you said, I've had a lot of coaches in my life, and I've had a lot of experience on the field. Um, and so I'm trying to like take in what everyone else has done, and everyone is so different. And I think what's really important is you're staying true to yourself as well, and you're working within the realm of your personality, because girls, as you know, they can notice when things are off and when things aren't genuine. And so I think it's important that you're staying who you are as a coach. And so I'm trying to find that style for me. I think it's a work in progress because I've only been doing it a couple years. And I try to work on it all the time. I love picking Coach Hill's mind. I love picking my coach at the University of Illinois, Coach Perry. I love calling her up and hearing the things that she's doing. I love listening to podcasts, and there's so many coaches out there that have so much wisdom, so much experience. And so I'm trying to just take that all in and be the best version of myself that I can. So I'm still trying to figure it out. But I would say the things that are important to me are just like having a good work ethic and just getting out there and working hard, because you only have so much time with each other. And so when we're here, we're given 100%, and that's, everyone's doing that. So I really like to focus on that. And I think that comes from me as a player too. I developed that work ethic just through like the Sluggers and just through sports. And I also focus on like the things that we can control. And we can control how hard we work, and we can also control our attitude. So those are things that are important to me as a coach. And so I think my coaching style is also using the fact that I am younger and that I can relate to these girls on a different level that maybe an older coach can't. And so I'm trying to use that to my advantage too, and work with that as long as I can before I get to that point that maybe I'm less relatable. But I just went through this whole process not too long ago. I went through the travel, I went through the recruiting, I went through the hard work. I've been there and I've done that. And so I want to have these girls to like rely on me and be able to lean on me for advice and like just a ear to listen to. And I want to be there for them in that. And so that's kind of where I feel like that's my coaching style, just being relatable, but also having high expectations, because I think girls can meet the high expectations if we set them. I think sometimes we're afraid to do that because we don't like to see them fail. But if you set high expectations, you'd be surprised at what can come from that situation. So I don't know, I'm still figuring it out, but I'm trying to learn. And I think the cool thing with everything that I'm taking in from like the podcast and other coaches is that all coaches are still learning, and all of them are still, adapting to things that change around them. And, they're working to be the best versions of themselves so that they can bring out the best versions of their players. And so that's just kind of where I'm at. And I'm constantly taking notes of how I can improve my coaching ability, because I have a lot to learn. I'm new to this and I'm learning every single day. And I know like this is like where I want to be, but I know that I have a ways to go to get there. And I'm excited because I love it, but I do have a ways to go. So.
Yeah, no, I think the key thing that from all of that, what you just said is, I think really good coaches never stop learning. I think that's the key. Is the game changes. People change, each team from one team to the next changes. And so if you're not able to adapt and change and continue to grow, then that's it. It's like even these people that you see on TV, the high level D1 coaches that you look at that, are at the top of the game. Even they show up to these, the off-season seminars, and they learn from each other. And it's like,
yeah,
it's a great model. It's like, everybody teaches everybody, and you kind of take what, fits for you. And so, if you stop learning, I think, it's probably time to get out of the game at that point. So, so I have maybe a little bit on the lighter section. So I have 8 and 9-year-olds, and we focus on things probably a little differently than you do at high school. So what would be, like your favorite cheer of all time that we should be teaching these 8 and 9-year-olds?
Cheer, like around.
Yeah.
So I was never like the leader of the cheers. If you know who the leader of the cheers was, can you give a guess?
Lancaster?
No, Andrea. She was like the cheer
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
leader. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
she knew those in like the back of her hand. I was like a big like chatter. Like I like the chattering, but oh man, a good one. Well, oh my gosh. No, for being like younger, I am having a hard time remembering them.
That's okay. Okay. Next question. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
So
I
that's
can come
something.
up with some. Just got to give me a
Yeah.
sec.
So ask your players the next time you have a chance to talk to them, because they'll probably know it spot
And
on.
you know
So,
what though? Like the chants have changed over the years. Like what I did when we were in high school or like is not what they're doing now. So,
no.
cool to
Yeah.
see that's evolving.
It's like music. It's like constantly changing. Like honestly, the cheer games have stepped up even in the 10 or so years I've been in it. Like it's evolved.
I think a big thing though with like helping with cheers, like we always did like the ball, like making rhythm with like balls on the bleachers or down the bench. So I always like that stuff because it got even louder and even more annoying to the other team.
Sure, absolutely. So one thing I definitely want to touch on before we have to break out, because I think we've got at most 15 minutes here left. I want to touch on being a multi-sport athlete. So one of the things that I try to be as encouraging as possible with my younger players, and even if I had older players, I really love multi-sport athletes. I think it develops somebody in a way that just focusing on the one sport, and you can put aside even all the overuse injuries and everything else, all the statistics, but you were clearly a 3-sport athlete. You're very good in all 3 sports too, and you dedicated to yourself to those sports. How did you juggle, keeping your academics at a very high level? Softball was probably your best sport, although you were pretty good at the other ones as well. And softball being an 11-month of the year, arguably a 12-month of the year sport. How did you balance like those other sports and still, keeping playing at a high level in softball and making sure that you were connected to your team in your other seasons and stuff? Kind of go into a little bit of that, because your story is very, very impressive, and it's a model that a lot of kids, I hope, that I'm coaching now will also follow.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it was tough at times. I was very fortunate to have coaches that were understanding of my situation. And I remember in high school, because I played volleyball, basketball, and softball, and volleyball was in the fall, and you have fall ball for softball, and so there were a lot of tournaments that and my parents always instilled me like whatever sport season that you're in, that's your first commitment. And so I know that softball was like always, that was number one for me. It always was. But if I had a game, like a volleyball game over like a softball tournament, I went to the volleyball game, and there were times where that was tough for me because I wanted to be at both. But I also, as soon as that volleyball game ended, me and my mom would pack up my stuff and I'd go straight to the softball tournament, no matter how far away it was. If it was I remember one day I was in Ohio, and like it was a long drive, but I'm changing in the car and I'm literally sprinting out to the field. And obviously I didn't play, but just to be there for your team and know that like, hey, I am doing everything I can to be there when I can. And don't worry, I'm going to make up this time that I lost. And so if I was missing out on games or practices, I was putting in that extra time when I had the time for myself. And so it's also important that if you're wanting to be a 3-sport athlete, awesome, but you have to be willing to put in that work outside as well. Just kind of going through the 3 sports and not committing more time, you're not gonna get to the next level. So for me, I always knew softball was my number one. So even during basketball season, yeah, I committed fully to basketball, but I also was practicing softball at nights. I was also, driving straight from basketball game in the car. My mom made dinner, bless her soul. I'm eating it in the car. I'm doing homework in the car on my way to softball. And So I never used it as an excuse to miss practices either if I was able to go to them. And so that's the thing about being a three-sport athlete. You have to be committed and you have to be willing to give up and sacrifice, but also put in more work than others. And you have to understand and accept that's going to happen. But I am with you. I love three-sport athletes or just multi-sport athletes. I think it's good in developing different skills. I mean, I could go on and on about three-sport athletes, but I think even at the higher level, coaches are looking for multi-sport athletes too. Like Hutch, one of the best coaches in the world, she looks for multi-sport athletes. She was one herself in college, and not only just physically and like athletic wise, it's just also mental game wise and just developing your skills. It just makes you more well-rounded. And, if you are just a one sport athlete, like you just play softball, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you, but it's just also learning to commit to that. Then it comes down to commitment and being competitive. And you have to be like a competitor. And that's kind of what it turned me into, because I loved it. Like I loved going from basketball to softball. I never was like, oh, now I got to go to softball. It was always something I looked forward to. So, yeah, my advice and my take on it is that you just have to commit 100% to everything when you can.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think, most people don't realize that don't know you or weren't part of, your life back when you were making the transition from high school to college is you had other opportunities, but you actually didn't have a scholarship opportunity from day one right out of the University of Illinois, but you chose to go there as a walk-on anyway. Can you kind of tell us about that decision path and why you did it, and maybe what you had to do to kind of earn your place? Because as I look back, it looked like pretty early on you transitioned into a starting primary role early in your career, regardless of whether you were a walk-on or not. But I can tell you, just from a coaching standpoint, walk-ons generally aren't given the same consideration early in their careers as maybe other scholarship athletes are. So I think it's a pretty cool story because you chose kind of a different path, maybe a different path than a lot of people would have chosen at that time.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And kind of going off of our last point, like being a three-sport athlete, I also had to sacrifice that whole recruiting tool a little bit, because I remember having like a tough discussion about just, me being a multi-sport athlete might take away from my recruiting and, might lessen my chances of playing at a higher level, which was difficult. And so I was very fortunate that I got the look from University of Illinois. And I remember it was my senior year, like everyone was committed and I wasn't committed anywhere. And I was like starting to go on like visits super late because I was late in the game. I should have taken recruiting a little bit more serious when I did, or like when I was younger, but I kind of got into it late. And so I started going on visits to D3 schools, and I was like, oh, this is nice, just getting my feet wet. And then my senior year, one of the coaches in the conference, Lindsay Hama, she played at University of Illinois, and University of Illinois was my dream school. My sister went there, and ever since like I stepped foot on campus, like that's where I wanted to be.
You drank the Kool-Aid right out of the gate, huh?
Yes, I loved it. Loved every part of it. And so I knew I wanted to go there. So I applied there without even knowing I was playing softball there yet, my senior year. So I applied there, I got in, and I was like so happy. And I, just continued to play and love my senior year. And I didn't stress about recruiting that much, honestly. And then the one coach from Hoffman, she wrote a letter to the coach at University of Illinois because she knew I was going there. And she wrote a personalized letter of like, you need to check this girl out. And I was like, oh, like, this is awesome. And so they came to one of the high school games against Palatine. And then they came to our conference championship against Elk Grove. And, just them being at the game was like cool in itself. And I remember I got the call when I was studying for finals. So this is finals of senior year. So this is like May. Usually people know where they're going by then. And I didn't really. I was like, yeah, I want to go to U of I, but I don't really know if I'm playing. Or I go to like Creighton and play softball, or I go to a D3 school. So I didn't really know where I was going. It was very like kind of stressful time, but they called me and they offered me a walk-on spot. And at that moment I was like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing. And so I said yes. And I remember when I got to U of I, there was 9 freshmen that were there, and that's like a big incoming class. And I remember all of them like knew the new class, but they didn't know who I was. And that was tough because they're like, who is this chick? And I kind of felt like an outcast because they're like, oh, Katie, oh, Jade, oh, so-and-so. And I'm like, I'm Allie, like, and so the transition was tough the first couple of months because I was this new girl this walk-on that I didn't go on the official visits. I didn't go on these big recruiting things, and I wasn't looked at a ton of times. And so I had a lot to prove. And I remember in practices, like just like working my butt off and like kind of earning respect from my players. And that was really, or from my teammates. And that was really cool, a cool process. And I remember in the fall, we played DePaul and I got a starting spot. Sorry, I'm going really into detail about this, but
No, this is great. Yeah.
We were playing DePaul and it was my first game that I'm starting at second base. And before this even happened, I remember this 5th-year shortstop came up to me and was like, hey, what's your name? And I was like, Allie. And she was like, oh, what position do you play? I was like, well, I played shortstop at the time. So I was like, shortstop. And of course she was a shortstop. I didn't know this. And she's like, good luck with that. And like walked away. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it was so intimidating. And so anyway, I got this the spot at DePaul, and we were playing Morgan Mays, who I had literally played in high school with in the regional championship. So I was like batting off her. I already hit off her before. So I had that advantage. And I ended up going like 3 for 5 and playing pretty well. And I got a text from that shortstop, the 5th-year shortstop, that night. And it's like something I'll always remember. She was like, hey, like, you go, girl. I'm so proud of you. And I'm sorry for ever underestimating you. Like, I think you're going to be a great asset to this program. And it was just one of those, like, yeah, I made the right decision. Like, this is awesome. And it's then started to transition and started to be like, obviously a really cool story and time at U of I. So it definitely like took some adjustments, and it was tough at the beginning, but yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great story. It's like, go a different direction, and you followed your heart, and it worked out. I mean, honestly, it couldn't have worked out any better.
I know. At the time, you don't think, like, I didn't think that I'm making this decision that I'm going to have a career at U of I. Like, I really didn't think that. I'm like, I just want to play. And like, and then hard work, it just takes you a long way. And I think that's like a huge message to girls. Like, you really can do anything if you set your mind to it. And if you're passionate about it. Like, I love the sport. I loved everything about it. And I just always wanted to be like the best that I could be and the best for my team. And it takes you places that you didn't think that you could go. So I think that's like a huge message.
That's awesome. Well, I don't want to impose on your next meeting, so I think we're running out of time here, although I think you and I could probably talk all day. But
I know.
You can't believe how much I appreciate you spending this much time with us. I think the girls are going to love listening to your story, and hopefully everybody gets out of it a little something maybe that's personal to them that they can help themselves with. But you're always fantastic and giving back to the Sluggers, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate everything that you're doing as well. Girls are lucky to have you.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll catch up with you soon. Hopefully you guys can get back on the field here before long, and you can get out of your tan room.
Yes, you hang in there as well.
Thanks. Take care, Allie.
All right, you too. Bye.